Spoiler alert. Please be advised that the following will contain spoilers for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. What's up, everybody? It's me, E-Man from E-Man's Movie Reviews. We are at episode 5 of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I have got to say, this is everything I have hoped that I've been waiting for in this series to be. I mean, everything that we got in this series, in this episode, action, the drama, the comedy, everything was perfectly balanced, as all things should be. Now, before we begin, during our last live video, a lot of you, apparently, I had no idea people would care, but a lot of people really liked this shirt that I got. So, I have made it available. If you scroll down below this video, you can see it in my store, my little merchandise store, so you can buy it there. Or if it hasn't been populated yet, I will pin it in the comment section of this video, so you'll get the link there. But we have so much stuff to talk about, and I'm probably assuming that this video is going to be a lot longer than usual, so let's just jump right into it. Captain Crack is escaping the crime scene after committing murder in the open public. Bucky and Sam meet up and let him know that he needs to give up the shield right now. Walker is insistent that he had to kill the Flag Smasher, even though Bucky and Sam informed him that he wasn't the one that killed Lamar. Walker doesn't want to give up the shield, and Bucky said, "F all of that noise. We ain't trying to hear that. You about to lose that shield." There's an all-out brawl that ensues. Bucky and Sam break Walker's arm, and the duo channels their inner WWE Dudley Boys and KO Walker. Bucky picks up the shield and tosses it to Sam. What did my man Bucky say? Just a couple episodes. What did he say on the plane? Yo, we need to jump this fool for a shield. And you know what? That's exactly what they did. And I love this fight. This fight was rock solid. I like the fact that they were going at it and everything. There was a couple issues though. Okay, if we being honest, there was one little issue, that I found with this fight. And that was back when Walker actually ripped the wings from Sam. First of all, my man, he ripped your wings, not your heart. Go back and look at that scene. My man, Walker took off the wings and Sam was like, "Oh." Sam was like, "Not my wings. Oh, not my wings. Oh, good night." Bro, get up. Go fight. You letting Bucky get beat up and stuff and you just out here. He didn't knock you out. He didn't hit you. Like, what are you doing? But either way, I mean, look, they got, Captain Crack out here just being wild and stuff. I loved his descent into madness, which is exactly what we expected, right? Because if you look at the past videos, how many times have I been talking about how the serum will bring out the worst in people, or better yet, it'll bring out what's already there. And, just like in the comics, this is definitely taking its toll on Walker, and my man is losing it. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but this scene was very similar to Avengers Infinity War when they were trying to get the gauntlet off of Thanos. The only difference here is that they did it right and broke John's arm to get that shield off. Now, there was a moment right after this fight that I thought was very interesting, right? So now we all know, I think at this point, that this show likes to deal with a lot of different themes, but they also like to deal with subtext. And by subtext, I'm talking about like the underlying themes or the underlying symbolic messages that they're trying to say, even if it's not completely, out there and overt. And this one scene with the blood on the shield, and with Sam trying to wipe it away, definitely kind of spoke to me. And I think we can agree that the shield here is a symbol of America, right? And just like in the last video and the last episode, I said that the blood on the shield is kind of representative of America's history. It's part of its history. It's the ugly part in how the country was founded and still operates in some capacities. It's not the whole entirety, but it's still a part nevertheless. And to see a black man wiping away that blood, I feel it was a bit symbolic of Sam's character in general. He doesn't want to see that blood the same way. He doesn't want to engage with racism. He wants to hold on to the ideals of America, and despite the complicated history for black folks in this country, he's still willing to try and wipe it away to preserve that American dream that he believes in. Anyway, that's just my quick take on it. I'm not saying that is what the show is doing, or maybe it's not. I don't know, but that's just how I kind of took that. And if you have a different view, let me know what you thought about the whole wiping the blood on the shield thing. The GRC begins their raid on various camps, but Karli and her other followers are long gone. Torres comes in to inform Sam that Captain America will be facing consequences. Sam leaves Torres the busted up wings. Real quick, now the GRC here, they're conducting raids, and that's something to keep in mind because it's clearly going to gaslight Karli and her followers and cause her to go even down a darker path. Remember that these are people who didn't get snapped away, had 5 years of peace and prosperity, and then all of a sudden they were cast out of their homes or countries into camps. So now to have the GRC come out of nowhere and like further round them up and, put them in other areas, it just feels like another slap in the face. Now, another thing to pay attention to here is Torres getting Sam's old wings. In the comics, Torres does become the new Falcon, so maybe this show is going to show us that, or maybe that's something that they'll hint later on in the MCU, but it was a nice little Easter egg that Sam gave him the wings, just like in the comics. In front of a council, Walker is being stripped of his title of Captain America and essentially being relieved of his duty. He reminds the council and the world that he is Captain America and places the blame on them for making him this way. While being comforted by his wife that's clearly out of his league, a woman approaches them. She says that her name is Contessa Valentina Allegra de la Fontaine. She says that the government wouldn't have had an issue had Walker killed the Flag Smasher in private. She also said that she knows that he was taking the super soldier serum and that he no longer has the shield. She hands him a card with no information and tells him to pick up when she calls. Finally, she confirmed what was long suspected, and that was John indeed married up. Now, you guys already know how I feel about Captain Crouton, but I gotta say, Wyatt Russell is putting on a show right now. My man is playing the role very, very well. But to Walker's point, I gotta agree with him here. And dare I say, I kind of feel for him too. Now, he's still nuts, don't get me wrong. We ain't forget that he was also condescending to the Dora Milaje and talking out of line and out of pocket. But because of the symbolism here, I do feel for him. And what I mean is that he and this entire situation is kind of a representation of the darker side of how America and other countries might do their vets dirty. He said that he followed orders. He followed the mandates. He did all the training. He did everything they told him to do and expected from him, and they still threw him under the bus. Not only that, but he's not getting any real support from the government either. John's clearly suffering from PTSD after multiple tours in Afghanistan and seeing his own partner and best friend die in front of him. I mean, think about it. Nobody is saying like, hey, John, maybe you need some therapy, kind of like how we did for Bucky. And I think that that's kind of symbolic of just the way that the country just does not take care, or good enough care, I should say, for the vets. Look, I've never served. I don't have the guts to do that. But because of that, it is one of the reasons why I honor and celebrate and highly respect the people, the men and women that go out and protect and serve our country and put their lives on the line for us. That is not an easy job to do at all. And it requires all the support that we can possibly give. And right now, John is a representation of how that is not happening for a vet. As for Contessa, or Val, aka Madam Hydra in the comics, she was a minor character at best. She was kind of like a super spy that was like a triple agent. She originally was a love interest for Nick Fury. She worked for S.H.I.E.L.D., but then she betrayed them to go work for Hydra, but then she betrayed them to go work for another Russian organization called the Leviathan. So who knows where her allegiances actually lie. Now, due to the pandemic, both this series and the Black Widow movie got pushed back and delayed, and supposedly her character was supposed to debut in the Black Widow movie. Now, I don't know if that's still going to happen or if Marvel's going to trim that scene out or whatever, but that's just something we're going to have to wait and see. Now, as for her actual, involvement in the MCU, I have no idea exactly where they're going to go with her because she is such a minor character. They can do almost anything with her. But The one clue I think we are going to get, because she's trying to recruit John, and John is going to become the U.S. agent or whatever they're going to call him from the comics, but he's going to be like his own rogue, agent. But the fact that she's trying to recruit him kind of gives me the impression that she could actually be working to build up the Thunderbolts. Now, I know in the past couple videos I told you don't worry about the Thunderbolts because they're coming. And again, the Thunderbolts, for those who don't know, are basically a gallery of supervillains that come together for different reasons. They might be coming together to pretend to be superheroes, or sometimes they come together to just have a redeeming arc and, try and make up for their past evil acts and stuff. So we'll have to see where they go with that. But yeah, with Val, we have no idea what she's going to do, but I think it is hinting closer towards the Thunderbolts. At the GRC, Karli finds all the refugees taken away. She's ready to take desperate measures. Back in Sokovia, Zemo is at a memorial as Bucky shows up. Zemo decides that he's not going to kill Bucky. He also tells him that he was a programmed killer and that Bucky must kill Karli to make her stop. Before long, the Dora Milaje show up to take Zemo back to the raft. Zemo doesn't want to catch a Wakanda beatdown, so he immediately complies. Io gives Bucky a warning to stay away from Wakanda for a while, but Bucky asks for one last quick favor. Well, as I mentioned before, the GRC, their actions, they're gaslighting Karli at this point, and you see that she is starting to move and get towards more desperate measures. And at this point, I guess you can kind of say that she is starting to actually fall in line with what Zemo said she was going to in terms of thinking like a supremacist. Now, I'm also assuming that this is a memorial of Zemo's family that was killed in Sokovia. But this scene with Bucky I found to be really interesting, as the two men have apparently grown a mutual respect for one another. Zemo hates super soldiers, but Bucky is an exception here. I think the simple reason here is because Bucky is not looking or trying to be a supremacist the way that Zemo believed other super soldiers were trying to do. Both Bucky and Steve Rogers are kind of like the exception here. I also think that Zemo feels pity for Bucky because Bucky was pretty much just a tool for killing. Now, I will say that Zemo placed a very interesting seed in Bucky's mind. He warned him about Karli, and we already know that Karli is taking things to a next extreme level. So I would say we have to keep an eye on Bucky's actions in the final episode. Now, of course, shout out to my Wakanda sisters and Dora Milaje. Doop, 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 doop. And I love how cool and calm Zemo was during this. What did he do? He was like, oh, ladies. He ain't want none of them Wakanda problems. When I tell you, you do not want to mess with the Dora Milaje. You do not want to mess with them, okay? But they are escorting him to the raft. And if you recall, in Civil War, we saw the raft. That is where they held some of the Avengers at the end of the movie. And it's basically a maximum security prison where they're going to keep a lot of other supervillains. And you can also use this as another clue that they are probably going to do something with the Thunderbolts very soon. Sam heads back to Baltimore to speak with Isaiah. He brings out the shield, but Isaiah immediately tells him to leave it covered as the stars and stripes mean very little to him. Sam says that he wants to understand, but Isaiah says that every black man already understands. He comments on how he used to be blind, just like Sam, until he opened up his eyes. In the house, Isaiah shows Sam pictures of his late wife, and he tells him about how the military lied to her that he had died in prison. He continues to tell Sam about how he and other soldiers were injected with the serum. The government lied to them about what they were injected with and still sent them off on impossible missions. Some of the test subjects started dying as they became unstable. After being captured on a mission, Isaiah staged a rescue mission to go rescue his brothers in arms, since the higher-ups were planning on blowing up their camp to hide the quote-unquote evidence of the experiments. As punishment, he was thrown into jail for 30 years and experimented on constantly. Thanks to a kind-hearted nurse who took pity on him, she declared him dead, and that allowed Isaiah to escape. The nurse gave him many of the photos and letters from his wife that the military tried to hide away. Just think of the level of hypocrisy and irony and the fact that Isaiah went to jail for doing the very same thing that Steve Rogers did not too long before. Sam believes that the world has changed and that his story must be told. However, Isaiah fears that the worst will happen to him. He says that America will never accept the black man as Captain America. Sam leaves and heads back to his sister's place. Hold on. Wait a minute now before we go on any further. Did y'all see Elijah out there playing basketball? My man shot a clean air ball. You thought we didn't notice, but we did. Okay, big fella, I'm going to need you to work on that J before you start trying to be a young Avenger. I'm just saying. But anyway, to kind of bring it back down, I mean, this entire scene, I mean, I've been waiting for this scene forever, right? Like, I've been saying, yo, Sam needs to talk to Isaiah. And they did it. And I'm glad that they did it because there is so much stuff to talk about and unpack here. I mean, like, literally every line has so much that we can go into. But I got to say, this was probably one of the most emotional scenes for me. Just kind of seeing that pain that Isaiah was going through. You know, I mean, again, I've never served or anything, but I can only imagine what it's like going out, putting your life on the line for a country and coming back home and still being incredibly disrespected and mistreated as if your service meant nothing. I mean, you have to think about the fact that the emotional toll that would have on a person, the mental toll, is ridiculous. Now, this episode was called Truth, and that was because it was the same name given to the comic run that featured Isaiah's story. He started telling Sam some real hard-hitting truths about his past that also call on the complicated history of African Americans in this country. He mentioned the Tuskegee Airmen and the other black veterans who would go to war and fight for their country only to come home to find crosses burned on their lawn. Now, for anyone unfamiliar, the Tuskegee Airmen were the very first black military aviators in the U.S. Army Air Corps, which was a precursor to the U.S. Air Force. Their impressive performance earned them more than 150 distinguished flying crosses, and despite the Jim Crow laws of segregation at the time, the Tuskegee Airmen helped to encourage the eventual integration of the United Armed Forces. Now, it's very important for us to understand that Isaiah here is just a very small example of a larger systemic issue when it comes to the treatment of African Americans, veterans, and how they were treated by the country. I thought it was interesting throughout this conversation that Sam was so quick to defend Steve Rogers. But I think what's going on here is a little bit more of Sam's naivete just kind of on display. For Sam and many others, Steve Rogers represented exactly the perfect picture of what America believes itself to be. He is the true representation of what America has been wrapped up, packaged, and sold for decades. So whenever Isaiah talks about America in a negative way, even if it's true, it drastically conflicts with Sam's reality. Now, early in the conversation, Sam had said that Steve didn't put you in jail. And I liked Isaiah's comeback later on when he said that you want to believe that jail was my fault because you got that white man's shield. Rather, it was because the government didn't want to have his story come out. This is yet another wake-up call for Sam, because he was trying to personalize this to his white best friend, Steve. But Isaiah is trying to open up his eyes to realize that it's bigger than Steve Rogers. And this is kind of ironic, right? Because if you were to flip this situation, it's no different than, like, let's just say a white person having a black friend, and let's just say that black friend never talks about racism or never wants to deal with it. So then that informs the white friend to believe that there's no such thing as systemic racism. There's no such thing as racism being a problem. But that's the problem in itself, right? That one black friend is not representative of the larger, bigger problem. And just because it's outside of your immediate circle doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. But this entire concept of like being naive and stuff, it's not new. Steve Rogers went through the same exact thing from the first Captain America movie all the way to, the Winter Soldier movie. We saw him have a rude awakening when he started seeing how the government, how S.H.I.E.L.D., how Hydra, all this stuff was just messy. And he started to like develop a new awareness, outside of his peachy keen, nice looking apple pie view of America. And right now, Sam is just going through the same journey. Now, Sam was saying that they should really get Isaiah's story out there, and that the world should know, and that he knows people. But time out. Sam, who do you know? Bro, you can't even get a loan at the bank. Who are your people? Chill. Besides that, Isaiah didn't want his story to be told because he feared that the powers that be would come after him and end him. Keep in mind, they already imprisoned him, tortured him, and lied to his wife until she passed away. He's got a lot of reason to be concerned here. He also mentioned that they've erased him no different than how they've erased Black history for over 500 years. Look, you guys already know, I've talked about this in previous videos, that this has been a recurring theme because it is something that has and still does happen in American history. I mean, when it comes to Black history, America waters it down. It gets very selective. We only hear about certain figures like Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, and like, that's it. You know, you don't really get the full picture. And you get crazy stuff like in textbooks saying like enslaved Africans were just immigrant workers. Like, so once again, Isaiah's character here is definitely representing way more. But you tell me, and I'm curious here, do you think Sam should tell Isaiah's story? Do you think Isaiah's story should be told? Or, you know, like, hey, I mean, maybe not. You know, Isaiah does not trust anybody at this point. They have screwed him over too. Maybe it's better to just keep it quiet. I mean, personally, I would love to see Isaiah's story out there. I'd like to see him in the museum because he needs to be right there next to Steve and Bucky. And I still want to see that flashback of Isaiah whooping Bucky's tail and ripping his arm off. Come on, man. Somebody give me a young Isaiah Bradley. Just 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. Oh, please. But anyway, you let me know. Do you think Isaiah's story should come out? Should Sam tell it? What do you think? But we have got to talk about this. They will never let a Black man be Captain America. And even if they did, no self-respecting Black man would ever want to be. Woo! Man, Isaiah's out here dropping some bars. But this quote, I think we have to take it from his perspective. We know where he's coming from because he's obviously had a traumatizing past, which, understandably, will give anyone a bleak outlook on the future. So he's kind of projecting here by saying that no other Black man would want to be Captain America. That's probably true for him and people that have gone through situations like him, of course. But Sam, however, he doesn't have to subscribe to that exact frame of mind. But there is something for him to consider. Sam should consider the fact that if and when he does take up the mantle, that there will be a segment of America that won't accept him just because he's not the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Captain America that they've been conditioned to over the years. Yet again, this is serving as a wake-up call for Sam to view the world with a different perspective, even if it may not be the exact perspective as Isaiah's. I think the important thing to know here is that Sam knows that racism exists, right? He just doesn't really want to confront it. He actually wants to rise above it, which is totally admirable for sure. However, it's kind of the same problem of when people want to be colorblind. Being colorblind is not the best answer. Sure, it makes sense in theory, it makes sense in a vacuum, but it doesn't make sense in the real world the way that society is built right now. When it comes to color, you want to see color and you just want to respect it because somebody else's color brings a whole different life experience. It brings a whole different perspective. And we have to respect the fact that, hey, maybe I'm not experiencing certain things like you, but you know, like me being blind to that ignores what you actually have to live with. Because some people, especially people of color, Black people, brown people, whatever, they can't afford to be colorblind. And that's what Isaiah is trying to get Sam to recognize here. Recall, he said that he used to be just like him. He used to think just like Sam until life came at him fast. I mean, here's the thing. Sam can't outrace the race problem in America. As a Black man, it's always going to catch up with him wherever he goes. Now, the real question is, how are you going to handle it when it does? Back in Louisiana, Sam finds out the family boat is in desperate need of repairs. He calls in a number of favors from the neighborhood, and the community comes out in full support. Bucky arrives with a case from Wakanda. Before he gets settled in, he makes sure to properly introduce himself to Sam's sister, Sarah. He's got jungle fever, she's got jungle fever. Bucky wants that chocolate, they're in love. Okay, Bucky, we see you, bro. We see you, bro. Out here trying to be somebody's cream in their coffee. Bucky, I see you, bro. And it's all right, man. It is all right. It is no problem adding a little Nestle quick to your milk. I see you, bro. I mean, y'all saw him. Bucky was like, hey, girl, you know they call me the White Wolf. Wakanda forever. We jump to Captain Crap as he visits Lamar's family. He informs them that he tracked down and killed the person responsible for killing Lamar. Now, I did not really care for this scene. Not to say that it was poorly acted or anything. I just didn't like what Walker was doing to the family. Now, I can't say whether he was intentionally lying to them or if he just actually believes that he killed Lamar's killer, or if it's just a combination of both. What I don't like is that he was giving them this false sense of hope and this false belief that justice was served. I mean, from the very beginning of this episode, they told Captain Krusty that the Flag Smasher that he killed was not the actual one that killed Lamar. However, Walker wanted to hold on to this lie. And we do see the sister giving him a bit of an untrusting glare, too. I think she knows what's up and that it all sounds fishy. But here's the thing, I don't know. I think with Walker's character, with all the subtext and stuff, the writers might be doing something interesting with his character. Let's keep in mind the fact that, they got him up with a black wife, they also have him with a black best friend, and he's consoling this black family. But at the same time, he's still problematic. Let's not forget the fact that he was talking down to Sam, and he was condescending to the Dora Milaje. He doesn't treat Bucky with that type of animosity or microaggressions, not to the same level. So if anything, he might be a representation of some more thematic subtext, which is the idea that he thinks he has black friends, but in reality, he just so happens to know black people. And yes, I can tell you there is a difference, but I do think that Walker is also kind of representative of like another thing that happens with people in the country, which is kind of like holding a biased view despite actual evidence. Matter of fact, it kind of reminds me of like what happened during 9/11, where there was like all of a sudden all this bias against Muslims, and like people were just like, boom, you're Muslim, you gotta be a terrorist. And I think John is kind of going through a similar thing, like, oh, you a flag smasher, you gotta be Lamar's killer. And I'm not saying that the flag smasher was, completely innocent of doing bad things. However, it's not John's place to be the judge, jury, and executioner either. With that mindset, everyone who's a flag smasher is guilty of killing Lamar, and that narrow-minded view is incredibly dangerous, especially when you're walking around as the symbol of America, because now you're giving other people the green light that that's acceptable. Now, on the flip side of all of this, I also want to be fair. Let's not forget the fact that this man is still suffering from PTSD, and he really needs a lot of help that is not being offered to him at all, nor is he seeking it. We jump to Sharon Carter on the phone with Batroc. She says that she's got a job for him and that she'll pay him double this time. Okay, Sharon. I see you out here brokering deals powerfully. Look, I'm just saying, she's out here making these deals. I don't see Sharon calling anybody else, checking any higher up. She's making these decisions on her own. I don't know if she's the power broker or not, but there's clearly something going on here, and I'm assuming we're going to find out in the final episode. Back in Louisiana, Bucky and Sam continue working on the boat. Before they leave, Bucky gives Sarah another warm greeting. Sam and Bucky go back to the house to toss around the shield. Sam talks about the complicated history behind the shield in reference to his meeting with Isaiah. Bucky apologizes for not taking into consideration what the shield meant for a black man to take up the mantle. He then confesses that Sam giving up the shield made him feel like he had nothing left. So I absolutely love this interaction between Sam and Bucky. I love the fact that they're getting back together, that they're having some quality time to just iron out some things and, just kind of bond or whatever. And this is, again, exactly what I've been waiting for. This is what I was hoping they would have done throughout the entire series. Again, Sam is a counselor. He works with trauma, with traumatized veterans. Bucky is no exception to that. I get it. Sam might have had, been rubbed the wrong way earlier, but I just didn't really like how they handled it. And it made like a lot of the comedy and their little, conflict. I know people don't want me to say beef, but whatever it was, the friction that they had, I just didn't think that it was executed very well. But this situation now, I think it was done very well. Even the banter, even when they did the little banter at the end, I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, if you want to do the buddy cop thing, man, that's it right there. It felt more organic. It felt more authentic. Now, we also got some confirmation here that during the events of Endgame, Steve actually consulted and talked with Bucky and told him that he was planning on giving Sam the shield first. So this explains why Bucky was so cool about Sam getting the shield at the end of Endgame. And I love the fact that Bucky acknowledged that he didn't understand or consider what that would mean for a black man to carry the shield, and even followed up with an actual apology. And you know what? That is totally okay. A lot of times people are going to have certain social blinders. Men are not always going to think the way women think. Straight people are not going to think the way that LGBTQ people think. It's a matter of perspectives, and it goes both ways. The most important thing is that when you do have a certain blinder, and let's just say you mess up, just acknowledge it, apologize, and move on. At the end of the day, what we really want is just people to just have a wider perspective on things that they just wouldn't normally consider. But I absolutely love the fact that Sam was able to tap into his real superpower, and that was to give that counseling advice to Bucky. I mean, he basically told Bucky to quit going through the motions of making amends and trying to help other people to get more closure. And we saw that, right? Like, every time Bucky would go doing his stuff, he'd kind of be like, hey, I'm Bucky, I'm here to make amends. And, you know, he was just going through the motions. It didn't mean as much. But Sam was like, nah, you need to go out to these people and bring value to their lives. When you give closure to them, it does something for them, and in return, it'll do something for you. So I was just really, really happy that they did that, because that was like one of the realest moments in the entire show for me. Sam turns on Eye of the Tiger and starts training with the shield. He also sees the proud look on the face of his nephews as they admire the shield. Meanwhile, Batroc meets up with Karli and delivers a case of weapons to her. His primary interest is to go after Sam Wilson. She activates the Flag Smasher app and her followers start to gather. Now, what I love here is the fact that we got some really heavy stuff that's about to play out. Obviously, this entire series is a way for us to see how Sam will eventually become the new Captain America. In this moment, however, I think we just saw something brilliant happen with Sam's nephew. Sam talked about the sacrifices made for the shield in the past and how he could use that to keep fighting on. Now, we previously saw Sam talking with Isaiah about the history of the shield, but then we also see the nephew admiring it. And I think what this represents is Isaiah is the past, the nephew is the future, and Sam represents the present. So if and when Sam becomes the next Captain America, he can be fully informed of the complexities of the past, but at the same time, he doesn't have to let go of the bright future that the shield could be. And I think that is actually beautiful. As for Karli, well, looks like she's going to go full supremacist mode now. She's embraced the label of being a criminal and now is armed with some major weapons. She even has a small army that's willing to do her bidding. Looks like Zemo was right yet again. Sam watches the news as they report on the GRC, who's about to vote on some legislation that would move all the refugees back to their countries of origin. Torres has tracked down the pings of the Flag Smashers and tracked one of them down to New York, which just so happens to be the same place that the GRC are having their meeting. The Flag Smashers lock up the GRC members in the room as the alerts go off. Sam prepares to head over to New York, but he first opens up the box from Wakanda. In a follow-up post-credit scene, we see Captain Clown working hard on his DIY shield that he got from Home Depot. Alright, well, it looks like it's about to go down at the GRC with Karli and the Flag Smashers. Now, I think it's pretty obvious what's in the box. Wakanda is probably sending him his brand new wings, similar to the way that they did in the comics. Odds are that he's probably also getting maybe a new suit, too. I'm just thinking that they're going to give him a suit and wings, mainly because, you know, like, it's the season finale and you might as well show us off the new suit. And because he's on his way to New York anyway. So, you know, they might as well just make him look cool at the same time. Plus, if any of you are like really, really super interested, The merchandise, the toys, they've already spoiled what Falcon actually looks like. I'm not going to post it. But if you are actually interested, you can actually Google, what Captain America will look like if you look up the toys and merchandise. But I will say that he looks just like the comics. And I think and hope that when we see this, play out in the final episode, that the uniform looks pretty cool. But I'm pretty confident. I mean, look, they did a really good job with WandaVision, showing us a brand new uniform with her. So I think they're going to knock it out the park with Sam as well. What is Captain Crack doing with this Fisher-Price shield? Bro, ain't nobody checking for you. But I am looking forward to this big meetup because this is going to be a slobber knocker, y'all. It's going to be off the chain. Anyway, I am very happy with this episode. This was everything, like I said before, that I was hoping for. And it's going to be very interesting to see how they wrap all of this up. Now, if I had to wager a guess of what's going to happen in the season finale, I think that probably Karli is going to attack the GRC. Sam is probably going to try and stop her, but then Batroc is going to try and stop Sam. But then U.S. agent John Walker is going to try and kill Karli, and Sam and Bucky are going to try and stop him from stopping her, and it's just going to be a whole triple, quadruple threat of just madness. So I am fully expecting an action-packed finale, hopefully movie quality, type of level. And it is definitely going to be something that is going to be can't miss television. I know that much. Either way, I think we're also going to get our first look at the new Captain America, and I cannot wait to see it. And I cannot wait to see how does America react to this black man being the new Captain America. We are just going to have to wait and see because I have no idea where they're going to go with it. But anyway, what did you think about this episode? What were some of your favorite parts? Let me know in the comments down below because, golly, there was so much to talk about here. Anyway, that's all I got for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Please don't forget, every Friday, especially next Friday, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, we are going to be meeting up for the final episode of the Falcon and Winter Soldier reaction video. We are going to talk about what happened. We're going to react. It's going to be nuts. I hope to see all of you there. It is definitely going to be a good time as it's always been. But anyway, that is all I got for today. Thank you again so much for joining me. If you're new here and you like what you see, feel free to subscribe, hit the like button, and definitely go check out my other videos. I just put out a WandaVision Endgame theory video you probably might enjoy. Feel free to check that out, or just some other videos on my channel. Anyway, I've got more videos and reviews to do for you all, and until next time, I'll see you all later.